It was back in March of this year that Adrian Newey joined Aston Martin. The sport's most storied designer, leaving Red Bull, was just another cog in the machine, which led to Christian Herr being fired. But it was to Aston Martin's advantage. Having designed championship-winning cars for Williams, McLaren, and Red Bull, there were some who assumed his impact to Aston Martin would be almost instant. That hasn't been the case. Since his arrival, nothing happened in the way of Christian Herr. Aston Martin have continued to languish in the midfield. But this season was never Adrian Newey's aim. As a designer, there was little he could do to change the fate of a car that had been designed 6 months earlier. His vision was always on 2026. Having worked with a team behind the scenes for 6 months now, Adrian Newey clearly isn't happy with what is happening, and change has now come. Today, I'll check out what Adrian Newey has been up to and why it could be a worry for Aston Martin next season. So, let's get going. Adrian Newey, arrival at Aston Martin in March of this year, was just one part of the beginning of a new era for the team. The incredible investment by team owner Lawrence Stroll has seen them take the best talent from a number of teams to fill out their brand new factory at Silverstone. Newey obviously arrives with a big reputation, and there are big expectations for next season. When you see Adrian in the media, it is easy to assume that this polite and softly spoken man is exactly the same in the factory. You can imagine him sitting in front of a drawing board in his office with a cup of tea, not rocking the boat too much, just giving his designs to his team and asking them to run the tests and check they work how he wants. To the media, he's almost like a kindly old badger from a children's tale. But the reality is completely different. If you've read his autobiography or heard from people who used to work with him, then you know he is a ruthless competitor. He is fierce. He is brutal when needed. He has no fear about rocking the boat when it needs to happen. Aston Martin are very obviously a team who need their boat rocking. Yes, they had that run at the start of 2023, which was very impressive. But 7 podiums for Fernando Alonso is not the team zenith. They want to be winning championships, and that requires upsetting a few people. Newey has had his time to work with the team and work out what's going on and what is going wrong, and the fallout of that has now started. Aston Martin's aerodynamics director, Eric Blandon, is set to leave his role at the Formula One team as part of a wider technical staffing reshuffle ahead of the 2026 season. Blandon, who has previously held senior aero roles at Ferrari and Mercedes, joined Aston Martin originally as Deputy Technical Director in 2022 under Dan Fellowes. Following a restructuring last winter by CEO Andy Cal, which included Fellowes' departure, Blandon was moved into a new role as Aerodynamics Director from the start of this season. An Aston Martin spokesperson said to the BBC, "We don't comment on internal matters, and we don't have anything to announce yet. However, we are going through a technical restructure ahead of the 2026 season, which will be announced in the near future. It is understood that around 7 senior figures involved in aerodynamics and car design are to leave their current roles within the Aston Martin F1 team, including Blandon and former chief designer Akio Haga. Further changes are expected within the technical department, amid a refocus of the team's priorities as it takes on board feedback from managing technical partner Adrian Newey and newly appointed Chief Technical Officer Enrico Cardiel. Some of the staff leaving the F1 program may be retained in other parts of the Aston Martin motorsport business rather than cut entirely. The group also owns an advanced technologies division, where former Chief Technical Officer Andrew Green was moved before the 2023 season. There is also their WEC team, which has had a rocky start to life on the endurance circuit. Earlier this year, Aston Martin appointed a new chief aerodynamicist, Gioino Jack Venno, as well as luring one of Newey's former Red Bull lieutenants, Charles Wood, back to F1 from Apple as simulation and vehicle modeling director. The British team has signed Marco Finello, an expert in simulation at artificial intelligence systems. The hiring of Finello was reportedly recommended by Enrico Cardiel, and he'll serve as a senior performance consultant for the team. Finello actually helped develop Ferrari's first driver and loop simulator in the late 90s, and was a big part of Schumacher's success at the team. The signing of 2 big names in vehicle simulation hints at what is happening behind the scenes at Aston Martin. But before I talk about that, if you're enjoying the video and want to keep up to date with everything happening in Formula One, then make sure to press the like button and subscribe to F1 Top Stories. Thanks a lot. Since joining the team in March of this year, Newey has had to get to grips with the strengths and weaknesses of a team in transition. It cannot be understated how big a transition the move out of the old factory and into the new one is. Having spent 2 decades at the top of the sport with Red Bull Racing, Newey has come to Silverstone and offered his advice and feedback on how the team can make improvements and where their resources can be better invested. In the cost cap world, the allocation of resources is a skill in itself. Teams cannot follow the Mercedes model of spending $500 million a year to find success. They have to be smarter, they have to prioritize, and they have to make trade-offs. The impact of Newey doing this at Aston Martin is clear. The hiring of big names in the simulation world is a sign of an obvious push to improve the team's testing capabilities in this department. Since Formula One has been heavily restricting the amount of real-world testing that teams can do, simulation driving has become more and more important. Next season, F1 will have 3 preseason tests. Test 1 will be a private test and will take place at the Circuit to Barcelona, Catalonia, between January 26th and 30th, while Test 2 will be held at Bahrain International Circuit between February 11th and 13th. The Bahrain International Circuit will also host Test 3 from February 18th to 20th before the season begins in Australia on March 6th to 8th. With the teams having to handle the largest change in F1's technical rules in memory, they'll need all the time they can get to work out how to run these new cars on track. While that testing time will be vital for the teams, any testing done on those 3 sessions is going to have very little impact on their performance come the start of the season. They're unlikely to be taking data from the end of January, designing, manufacturing, and then fitting parts for Race 1 at the start of March. That isn't the timeline that F1 teams work to. That is why the simulation driving that is happening now is so important. Teams will all be testing their cars in the simulator to find improvements. And the better your simulator team, the more faith you can have in the data you're producing. Speaking earlier this year, team principal Cal said Aston Martin was taking on board Newey's input in a bid to get itself in the best shape possible to hit the ground running for the start of the new rules era in 2026. We all knew and suspected which areas needed to be improved, said Carroll. So we knew we needed to give things a nudge in a good direction, but we didn't know how much. Adrian has been able to do the gap part of analysis by providing the target point, and therefore, then you know the journey that needs to be taken. Carroll also talked about the need to ensure that the whole organization was working together in the right way and was fit for purpose based on the demands of current F1. There is the case that every department has grown over the last 3 or 4 years, so they've grown in capacity and toolset capability. But have they grown together as a team? I would question that. Cal said people use the word silos. Have we got a solo mentality culture? I think there's more we can do to work together with a pure focus on what we're all here for, the race car. I think that's where having Adrian as one of the most experienced people in the paddock helps so much. So in terms of final decision, there's a very clear final decision maker. Aston Martin has to be pulling in the same direction. They have to be functioning as one team. Newey is clearly seeing the problems, and the fallout from the fixes is what we are now seeing. Do you think he can turn this team into a winning machine though? Why don't you let me know your thoughts in the comments down below? And until next time, drive safe, and bye for now.